I was at a doctor's office recently. I'm not sick, just trying to get all those wellness things done, before the end of the year. And I'm in the waiting room surrounded by information about women's health. It's a depressing place to be. So I look at one magazine that's all about the importance of getting a bone density test before you're 60 and all these other things that you need to do before you're 60. And I just put the magazine away in age denial and flipped through some other magazines, and there was a magazine there called The Bump. I thought, what is that? It's a magazine for pregnant women. I thought this wasn't available when I was, years ago. So I thumbed through that. Things have changed. The article that caught my attention was, "Who do you invite to your delivery?" I grew up in the 60s, and I remember on movies and sitcoms when there was a birth, it was barely discussed. The woman was whisked away, and you saw only the waiting room where fathers paced back and forth, smoking cigarettes. And then the nurse would come out and say, "Mr. So-and-so, you have a baby boy or you have a baby girl." Even in adoptions, you just showed up and this baby came out already, for you to take home. And then things progressed. We let fathers into the delivery room, and then we made delivery rooms less hospital-like and more home-like, and all kinds of options. But the idea of inviting people to your delivery is new to me. And so it talked about you want people who are supportive, people who will say positive things, people you trust. And I'm wondering, how many people do you invite? And what do the invitations look like? I mean, how do you know what time to show up? But it did say you should consult your hospital or birthing center about the number of people allowed, and you don't want too many people. And you need to take control, mother. You need to tell people in advance, I want you and you here, and I want you to stand here or there. And the birth photographer, but you were in control of all of this. Who do you invite to your delivery? I think on this night about our dear Blessed Virgin Mary, who was not in control of hardly anything. She did not have the benefit of any women's health magazines or the latest edition of what to expect when you're expecting. But I thought, if she had the opportunity to make a list of whom she would invite to be there, she wasn't even sure about why she was going to Bethlehem. Why do we have to go here and now and on this donkey? And this man that she's just married, she probably would have wanted her mother there, maybe her relative Elizabeth, but Elizabeth was busy with a new baby. Maybe there will be someone nice at the inn who has helped with childbirth before. Mary had no control over who was in that stable. Almost the opposite end of the spectrum there from, letting people know in advance that they've been invited. We have these uninvited guests. They didn't ask if they could come. They received an invitation from angels. No one asked Mary if this were okay. Again, she didn't have benefits of pregnancy protocol and the advice of other women. All she had was the words of an angel who said, "Fear not, fear not." So these uninvited guests come with their smelly sheep and their dirty clothes and want to get close to the baby and to worship and to sing praises. And a little later, in our Christmas plays, it's always the same night, but probably a couple of years later, or maybe a few months later, other guests arrived. She had no idea they were coming. Do you know how much it takes to feed a camel? And the water trough certainly wouldn't be big enough. These uninvited guests. And they are so wealthy and important and bring an entourage of people with them. Uninvited. But yet they've been told by a star that this child must be visited. Mary had no control over any of that. When you have the Christ child, uninvited guests show up. And you have the choice to welcome them. You welcome people when you have the Christ child. Christmas Eve night is a special night. And we talk about welcoming baby Jesus into our hearts. And when we partake of this table, we know that Jesus invites us. Well, the good news is, or maybe the hard news is, that when we invite Jesus into our hearts, he brings uninvited guests with him. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could just linger at the manger with Jesus in our hearts? But all those uninvited people show up. People whom Jesus loves. People that we would rather not associate with. People who make us uncomfortable. People who believe a little differently than we do. Maybe people who don't even know Jesus at all. Others come that we feel intimidated in front of or feel like we're not good enough to be with them. If we really invite Jesus into our hearts, we've got to make room. We sing joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. Well, brothers and sisters, we've got to prepare more room than just for the baby Jesus, because I guarantee he's invited a lot more people into your heart. We know that because of this meal that we share.